Hey guys, I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography based here in beautiful, sunny Southwest Florida, and something very strange happened during my transition back to Nikon. As a YouTuber, I kind of have to expose myself to virtually every camera system in the marketplace today, and each one of them has their own attributes that are stronger in some than they are in others. And by the way, I'm referencing the three major camera systems, that is Canon, Nikon, and Sony. In my experience, and that's the key, based on my experiences, I think Nikon has the overall best image quality when you factor in low light capability, high ISO capability, sharpness of the images, the optics, etc. I think Canon has the best color, especially in good light, and I find their cameras probably the easiest to use. And Sony has the best overall autofocus system, with Canon being like right there. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that about a year ago I bought a Nikon Z5 and I called it the single most underrated camera that was introduced in 2020. And I still stand behind that. I think it's an amazing camera, especially at that price point. I liked it so much, I went ahead and I bought a Z6 Mark II, two of them, and I also bought another Z5 in preparation to completely go back to Nikon mirrorless for my professional work, both in portraits and in real estate. Then I spent a fortune on core lenses, the 30, the 50, the 85, all the 1.8s, the 14 to 24, 24 to 70, 70 to 100, 2.8s, and in fairness, all six are optically amazing, sublime. That said, I did run into a couple of quality control issues. For example, my 50mm would not initialize with my camera and it sounded like its gears were grinding, and my 70 to 200 had a major focusing problem. Now, both were replaced without issue, but that's kind of a high percentage of defects for a new line of camera and lenses. It kind of surprised me a little bit. But that said, I'd made my decision, and Nikon was going to be my professional photography solution moving forward, for real estate and portraits. My company also does real estate videos, and I own a Sony a7S Mark III, and I think it's an amazing camera for video. Recently, I was on a real estate shoot where all I had with me for Nikon was my 14 to 24, and when I finished the shoot, the client asked me if I would take her portrait. I didn't have my Nikons with me, but I did have a video shoot on the next property, so I did have all my Sony gear with me, and I always have a flash or two in the car, a couple of modifiers, no matter what. So I said, sure, I'll take your portrait. I grabbed the a7S III and the Sony 85 1.8, which is a pretty good combination for portraits, even though the a7S III is only 12 megapixels. This is where it gets interesting. I never really used the a7S III for photos. I've used it a bunch for video. In fact, we're videoing me right now on the a7S III and the 85 1.8, and it's great for video. What caught me completely off guard was how amazing it was for photos. Sony has given its advanced autofocusing system to the a7S III, and let me tell you right now, I could not believe how sticky the iDetect autofocus was. It was noticeably better than Nikon's. And by the way, Nikon's iDetect autofocus, it's not bad. It's just not as good as Sony. The Sony's is amazing. I mean, it's amazing. I couldn't believe how it stuck on the eye. Almost every single shot was in focus, literally, almost every single one. It was fast and decisive. It was one of those seminal moments that made me question whether I had made the right decision by switching to Nikon. So I watched a couple of A7 IV video reviews, and I saw that Sony had given the A1 autofocusing system to the A7 IV. I like the A7S for photos, and honestly 12 megapixels, it's generally good enough for all kinds of photography, but I wanted a bit more resolution, so I ordered and now have received an A7 Mark IV. Not only an A7 Mark IV, but also the brand new 70 to 200mm f2.8 Mark II. Full disclosure, I bought them all with my own money, and there are links down below in the description if you want to buy one yourself. I've been using the combo for about 2 weeks now, and honestly, I'm blown away. So this review is a review of the 70 to 200mm f2.8 Mark II from Sony on both an a7S Mark III and an a7 Mark IV. Sorry for the long-winded intro, but let's get on to the review. First up is the build, and wow, I love the direction that Sony, Canon, and Nikon are going with their latest generation of lenses. They're all using lighter weight materials in their housing, and that gives us amazing build quality and yet much lighter weight. To wit, the Sony 70-200mm f2.8 Mark II comes in at 2.3 pounds versus the Mark I's 3.2 pounds. That's almost 33% lighter. Now let's be clear, it's not lightweight, it's just notably lighter than the Mark I version. This new generation of 70-200s from all three manufacturers, all three are just much easier to carry around all day long. Back to the Sony. The zoom ring is smooth, but it doesn't offer a whole bunch of resistance, and you'll notice the lens barrel doesn't extend or retract when zooming. The focus ring is also really smooth and tactile, but it offers very little resistance. Like previous generations of focus rings on Sony camera bodies, this one too is fly-by-wire, and how quickly it reacts is directly correlated to how fast you rotate the focus ring. Not ideal for video shooters. Sony's also included an aperture ring which clicks firmly into position, or you can set it to be declicked, which means you'll have smooth aperture changes, which is nice when you're filming. The lens has a variety of switches on the side here, everything from focus distance limiting and stabilization modes, as there are 3 different stabilization modes, not to mention customizable function buttons on the side of the barrel of the lens. I don't actually use these, but I could see where they'd be useful. On the inside, there are 17 elements arranged in 14 different groups. Included in that formula are, ready for this? 2 ED or extra low dispersion elements and 2 super ED elements, including 1 spherical ED element to effectively suppress chromatic and spherical aberrations. That's pretty impressive. There are also 2 spherical lenses including 1 extreme spherical lens or XA lens to minimize distance-related aberrations and also to reduce onion ring bokeh, and thank God for that. There's also a nano AR coating that controls flare and ghosting. This is a Mark II coating, by the way, that suppresses flare and ghosting with support from a new optical design that reduces internal reflections. That's all Sony's literature. The aperture ranges from f2.8 to f22 throughout the zoom range. And speaking of the aperture, Sony's given us an 11-blade, count them, 11-blade aperture diaphragm that helps create smooth circular bokeh at all aperture settings. And let me just tell you right now, the bokeh is butter. It's pretty impressive. The front filter thread is 77mm, and Sony has made the lens dust and moisture resistant. And frankly, at this price point, I should be able to take a bath with this thing. I won't, but I should be able to. The bottom line is, Sony's on a quest to quell all of their naysayers about the quality of their products, and the 70-200 f2.8 Mark II from a build perspective is amongst the best that I've ever had the pleasure to work with. And as such, for build, the new 70-200mm f2.8 Mark II from Sony gets a perfect 10 out of 10. Next up is autofocus speed and accuracy. 2 words, instantaneous and super sticky. Wow. In continuous autofocus mode, I've never worked with a lens and a camera combo like the a7S III and the a7 IV and a lens like this. If you shoot portraits, it's a sniper with killer accuracy. Autofocus in general has gotten so good that I've seen YouTubers conduct these crazy tests just to determine which system is better. But that kind of stuff rarely happens in the real world. It's like this is the new 400% zoom test on autofocus to determine image quality as far as which system is better. Okay, wait a minute, that sounded a little bit convoluted. All I'm trying to say is today's autofocus systems have all gotten so good in general across the board that we have to do these ridiculous acid tests to determine which one is better. And even these crazy acid tests aren't really a reflection of the real world and what the typical shooter is going to go through in a normal day. Sure, there are nuanced differences between these various autofocus systems between the different manufacturers, but the reality is a lot of these acid tests that, for example, like the one Tony and Chelsea did, sorry guys, I hope you don't mind me using your clip here, but like the one that Tony and Chelsea did here, it's a crazy situation where I just don't know if it's reflective of the kind of situation that you may find yourself in day to day. Granted, it's a nice insurance policy. It's good to know that the R3, for example, or the A1, or even the A7 Mark IV are all very good at capturing focus. I've been using the Nikon Z6 too. It too is very good at capturing focus. It's not quite as good as the latest Sony camera bodies, although I can't wait to try out the Z9, which apparently is even more amazing. Can't wait to try that. Bottom line is, these acid tests are great at showing us that, sure, in the most extreme of situations, one autofocus system is definitely more capable than another. But the reality is, pretty much all these cameras and their autofocus systems are going to get the job done. By the way, this is not to say that these asset tests, that the kinds that Chelsea and Tony are doing, don't validate that one system is better than the other. All I'm suggesting is that it takes this level of extreme testing to determine minute differences between autofocusing systems. They're all so close that it almost doesn't even matter anymore. But simultaneously, it is very clear, at least to me, that Sony's autofocus system is the best in the business right now. If you're shooting static subjects or even lifestyle type portraits, your subject will never move all that erratically. And truthfully, in that kind of situation, all the camera systems are going to handle routine situations like that with aplomb. It's just the Sony is so good at it. You just have to experience it and experience it compared to all the different systems to truly appreciate the differences between them. I'm not going to beat a dead horse on this one, as AF speed and accuracy with this lens and this camera are simply perfect. And as such, autofocus speed and accuracy gets another perfect 10 out of 10. Next up is optical quality and the quality of the results. It's built like a cruiserweight champ and has autofocus speed and accuracy that'll make a cheetah blush. But how are the optics? Simply put, top shelf. At all focal distances and all apertures, especially wide open, I've never used a lens this sharp and this accurate, and it's just something that inspires so much confidence. Not only am I nailing focus, the eyelashes are tack sharp, faces are brilliantly rendered, bokeh quality is simply sublime. I could go on and on and on. I've used the lens in video as well, and it'll hold a subject with literally zero hunting, zero. It locks on and stays on in tack sharp focus. But rather than listening to me gush about the 70-200, I'd rather just show you. First, we're going to go into Lightroom and I'm going to show you a couple of images to demonstrate the image quality, and then a series of videos and photo clips, or video clips and photos, showcasing the optics of the 70-200mm f2.8 Mark II. And I'll just tell you right now, this thing will leave a lasting impression. I just want to give you two quick examples of the 70-200's ability to render items in sharp focus, especially with the eye autofocus and especially wide open. Just two quick examples. Here's the first one. Obviously there's two young women, but when you zoom in 400%, you can see just how sharp these eyelashes are. Like every little detail is visible. It's pretty amazing. And then an even better example, I was even further away from this family. These were taken with the A7 IV, 83mm, f2.8, 1/125th of a second. It was off-camera flash lit with a Godox. And when I zoom in 400% on these, it's pretty remarkable how sharp and beautifully rendered all these faces are. It's really impressive. So overall, this is just one of the best performances that I've ever seen. There's not a ton of chromatic aberration. I'm not seeing a lot of flaring even into direct sunlight, and the bokeh pretty much across the board is just smooth with 11 blades and a rounded aperture. It's just absolutely spectacular. Okay, so just wanted to show you those real quick, and now on to the video and photo montage. Enjoy. Last up is value. And this is the sticking point. I mean, these days, it seems like it always is. With camera phones getting better and better, it seems like more and more actual camera companies like Sony are abandoning the consumer end of the market and putting the lion's share of their research and development into the very high end. And so it goes with the new Sony 70-200mm f2.8 Mark II. Awesome build, super fast and accurate autofocus, lightweight, especially for something in this category, and just epic image quality. But all of this professional goodness comes at a professional price. The high end of lenses keep going higher and higher and higher, and the 70 to 200 millimeter is no exception. We're pushing $2,800. In fact, it's the second most expensive of the new generation 70 to 200s, costing $1 less than the new Canon RF 70 to 200. And weight-wise, they're actually within a couple of ounces of each other, or grams. But this is where we are today. Camera companies are catering to the professional, and the 70 to 200 millimeter is squarely targeted at them. The bottom line is, for value, if you're going to pay this kind of money, then a lens like this better deliver. I'm happy to say the 70 to 200 millimeter Mark II absolutely hits the mark, even at its hypoxia-causing price point. So for value, the Sony gets a 9 out of 10. To wrap up this review, we gave the Sony 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8 Mark II a 49 out of 50 in our coveted Editor's Choice Award. The final word: if you happen to be a professional Sony wildlife and or portrait photographer and you need the very best in your professional work, it simply doesn't get any better than this. Rarely am I this impressed with the overall quality of a lens, and if you're going to charge this much money for a piece of gear, it better live up to the hype. Fortunately, the Sony 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8 Mark II certainly does. I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, and I'm based here in beautiful, sunny Southwest Florida. If you like videos like this, go ahead and give me a like, or better yet, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, happy shooting.